The morning air in Manhattan carried a crisp autumn chill as pedestrians hurried along Fifth Avenue. Among them, though moving at a considerably different pace, was Eliza Ward. At 32, she navigated the bustling sidewalk with practiced ease, balancing a cardboard tray of coffee cups while simultaneously checking her watch. Her dark curls bounced with each determined step, her worn messenger bag slung across a simple beige sweater and jeans that had seen better days. "Excuse me. Pardon me. Sorry," she called out cheerfully, weaving through the crowd. Despite the morning rush, Eliza's smile remained unwavering. She had exactly 7 minutes to deliver these coffees before her boss, the notoriously punctual editor of Small Wonders Publishing, would begin the morning meeting without her manuscript edits. 12 blocks away, inside the gleaming Kingsley Tower, Harrison Kingsley III stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, frowning at the city below as if it had personally offended him. At 38, Harrison had amassed a fortune that rivaled small countries' GDPs, built upon the tech empire his grandfather had founded and his father had expanded. "I don't care if he's the mayor, Vivian," Harrison spoke into his earpiece, voice clipped and cold. "Tell him I'll consider his proposal when he considers reality. The zoning laws exist for a reason, and my development doesn't need his permission to be brilliant." His assistant's sigh was audible even through the earpiece. "Yes, Mr. Kingsley." Harrison straightened his immaculate charcoal tie, a perfect match to his tailored Tom Ford suit. "I'm heading to the Palmer meeting. Have the car ready." Downstairs, Harrison's driver held the door of a sleek black Maybach as he emerged from the building, not bothering to acknowledge the doorman's greeting. He checked his watch, a timepiece worth more than most people's annual salary, and frowned. Traffic would make him 2 minutes late. Unacceptable. "Take Lexington and cut through on 43rd, he instructed, sliding into the back seat without looking, up from his phone. The vehicle pulled away from the curb, smoothly inserting itself into the morning traffic. Harrison barely noticed the city passing by, his attention fixed on the quarterly reports displayed on his tablet. The numbers were good. They were always good. But good wasn't what had built Kingsley Industries. Perfection had. 3 blocks later, the car slowed to a crawl. Harrison looked up with irritation. "What's happening, Marcus?" "Construction." "Sir, unexpected. GPS is recalculating." Harrison's jaw tightened. "I'll walk from here. It's faster." Before his driver could protest, Harrison had opened the door and stepped onto the sidewalk, his long strides cutting through the crowd like a shark through water. People instinctively moved aside, something about his posture, his expression, or perhaps just the aura of wealth and importance that surrounded him like an invisible force field. Rounding the corner at full speed, Harrison collided with someone, and felt hot liquid splash across his $5,000 suit. The world seemed to slow as coffee cups tumbled through the air, papers scattered like confetti, and a small feminine figure stumbled backward. "Are you blind?" Harrison roared, looking down in horror at the brown stain spreading across his pristine white shirt. Eliza Ward, now sitting unceremoniously on the sidewalk, blinked up at the towering figure before her. Her coffee deliveries formed a growing puddle around them both, and her carefully organized manuscript notes fluttered in the breeze. "I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, scrambling to her knees and attempting to gather her papers. "I didn't see you coming around the—" "Clearly," Harrison cut her off, brushing ineffectually at his ruined suit. "Do you have any idea how much this costs?" Eliza's apologetic expression faltered, replaced by something harder. "Probably about the same as my rent," she muttered, then louder. "If you hadn't been walking like you owned the sidewalk—" "I do own this sidewalk," Harrison snapped, then immediately regretted the childish outburst. He didn't, in fact, own this particular stretch of concrete, though he did own the building beside it. A small crowd had gathered, several onlookers recording the scene with their phones. Harrison Kingsley, tech billionaire and notorious recluse, covered in coffee on a public street. It would be on social media within minutes. Eliza finally stood, clutching her soggy papers to her chest. For the first time, Harrison really looked at her. The determined chin, the flashing eyes, the complete lack of intimidation that usually characterized people's interactions with him. "I said I was sorry," she said evenly. "But accidents happen. When people don't look where they're going, even important people in fancy suits." Something unfamiliar flickered in Harrison's chest. Surprise, perhaps, or an emotion he couldn't immediately identify. Before he could respond, his phone rang. The Palmer meeting. He was now officially late. "This is coming out of someone's paycheck," he muttered, more to himself than to her, before turning on his heel and stalking away. Eliza watched him go, her heart pounding with adrenaline and indignation. "You don't even know where I work," she called after him, earning a few chuckles from the dispersing crowd. What neither of them realized, as they continued on their separate ways, Harrison to his billion-dollar meeting and Eliza to what was sure to be a thorough reprimand from her boss, was that fate had just set in motion a series of events that would bring their worlds crashing together again. And next time, coffee would be the least of their problems. "You're fired." The words hung in the air of the small conference room at Small Wonders Publishing, as Eliza stared at her boss, Greta Phillips, in disbelief. "Because of coffee?" Eliza's voice cracked slightly. "Greta, I've been with Small Wonders for 5 years. I edited our bestseller last year." Greta, a stern woman in her 50s with reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, sighed heavily. "It's not the coffee, Eliza. It's about who you spilled it on." "I don't even know who that arrogant Harrison Kingsley III," Greta interrupted, sliding her tablet across the table. On screen was a social media post already accumulating thousands of likes. Harrison Kingsley, coffee-stained and furious, with Eliza looking equally incensed in the background. The caption read, "Billionaire problems. Watch tech mogul Harrison Kingsley lose it over coffee stain." "Oh my God," Eliza whispered. "Oh my God is right," Greta replied. "Harrison Kingsley owns Meridian Media Group, which, as of this morning, now owns Small Wonders Publishing. He's not just some guy you spilled coffee on. He's our new boss." Eliza collapsed back into her chair. "That's impossible." "That's business," Greta corrected. "And his personal assistant called 20 minutes ago. Apparently Mr. Kingsley was quite specific about your termination." 3 hours later, Eliza sat at her favorite coffee shop, laptop open to job listings that all seemed to require more experience or different qualifications than she possessed. Her phone rang, her roommate and best friend, Penny. "How bad was it?" Penny asked without preamble. "I got fired because I spilled coffee on our new corporate overlord," Eliza summarized. "And I'm pretty sure I'm being blacklisted. 2 interviews canceled on me already." "Wait, what? Who exactly did you spill coffee on?" "Harrison Kingsley III. Eliza mimicked a pompous accent. "Apparently he owns half of Manhattan, including, as of today, my former employer." There was a long pause. "Eliza, that's the guy I'm catering for tonight. The Kingsley Foundation. Charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum." Eliza sat up straighter. "Penny, you have to get me in." "What?" "No, I need this job. And if he fired you..." "I need to talk to him," Eliza insisted. "He can't just ruin my career over an accident. I'll wear a disguise, just a server's uniform. He won't even notice me." Back at their shared apartment, Penny reluctantly helped Eliza into a white blouse and black pants identical to the catering staff's attire. "This is insane," Penny muttered, pinning Eliza's curls into a tight bun. "If I get fired too..." "You won't," Eliza promised. "I just need 5 minutes with him." The Metropolitan Museum of Art was transformed for the evening, the Temple of Dender illuminated with soft golden lighting as New York's elite mingled in designer finery. Eliza maintained a low profile, carrying trays of champagne and avoiding eye contact with guests. She spotted Harrison immediately, impossible to miss in his tuxedo, surrounded by a circle of admirers. Closer now, she noticed details she'd missed during their sidewalk collision. The sharp jawline, the surprisingly expressive eyes, the way his smile never quite reached them when he spoke to most people. "That's Lindsay Collier," Penny whispered as she passed, nodding toward a stunning blonde hanging on Harrison's every word. Swimsuit model turned humanitarian. Rumor is he's been trying to get her attention for months. Eliza rolled her eyes. Of course he has. An hour into the event, Eliza had managed to work her way closer to Harrison without being detected. He was now standing alone near a display case, seemingly taking a moment away from the crowd. This was her chance. She approached with a tray of champagne. "Drink, sir?" Harrison glanced at her distractedly, then did a double take, his eyes narrowing. "You." "Me," Eliza agreed, setting down her tray on a nearby table. "Don't make a scene. There are more cameras here than on the sidewalk this morning." Harrison's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composed expression. "You're trespassing. And you're ruining my life," Eliza countered. "You got me fired. You ruined a $14,000 suit." Eliza blinked. "That's more than I make in 3 months." Something flickered across Harrison's face, perhaps the faintest recognition of his own absurdity. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Money? A settlement? I can have legal draw something up with a non-disclosure." "I want my job back," Eliza interrupted. "And I want you to stop blacklisting me throughout the publishing industry." Harrison studied her for a long moment. What's your name?" "Eliza Ward, senior editor at Small Wonders Publishing. Or I was, until about 6 hours ago." A slow, unexpected smile spread across Harrison's face. Not the practiced charm he'd been displaying to donors all evening, but something more genuinely amused. "Well, Eliza Ward, you've got courage, I'll grant you that." Before she could respond, a commotion erupted across the room. Lindsay Collier was engaged in an increasingly loud argument with another guest, their voices carrying across the elegant space. "Not again," Harrison muttered, his attention diverted. Mr. Kingsley, a frantic event coordinator, appeared at his elbow. "Ms. Collier is threatening to leave, and the press is already—" "Handle it," Harrison snapped. "I've tried, sir. She's demanding to speak with you directly." Something about her foundation's recognition during the speeches? Harrison's expression darkened, and Eliza saw genuine frustration replace his carefully maintained facade. This event is about children's literacy, not her latest pet project. Without thinking, Eliza interjected, "I can help." Both Harrison and the coordinator turned to stare at her. "Excuse me?" Harrison asked. "I'm an editor," Eliza said quickly. "I handle difficult authors with big egos every day. Let me talk to her." "You?" Harrison looked incredulous. "What's your alternative? Create a scene at your own charity gala?" She gestured toward the gathering crowd around Lindsay. "Tick-tock, Kingsley." In a decision that would later surprise even himself, Harrison nodded curtly. "Fine. Fix this, and we'll discuss your job." 15 minutes later, Lindsay Collier was smiling for cameras again, placated by Eliza's quick thinking, a promised feature in the Foundation's next newsletter, and a strategic seat upgrade at the dinner table. As the crisis subsided, Eliza found herself alone with Harrison in a quiet corner of the museum. "How did you do that?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Eliza shrugged. "I listened to what she actually wanted. People like being heard." Harrison considered her with new interest. "People don't usually surprise me, Ms. Ward." "Maybe you don't give them the chance to," she replied. A silence stretched between them, charged with something neither was prepared to acknowledge. Harrison broke it first. "I have a proposition for you. I already told you what I want. My job back?" "I'm offering something better," Harrison said. My personal assistant quit this morning. I need someone who isn't intimidated by me, who can handle difficult personalities, and who apparently has some skill at averting public relations disasters. Eliza stared at him. You want me to be your assistant after you fired me? I want to hire someone who stands up to billionaires and sneaks into charity galas to demand justice, Harrison corrected, a glint of something like respect in his eyes. The salary is triple what you made at Small Wonders. And if I say, no? Harrison's composed mask slipped back into place. Then you remain fired, of course. Eliza's eyes narrowed. That's blackmail. That's negotiation, he countered. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. He handed her a business card. 9 a.m. my office. Come with your answer. As he walked away to rejoin his guests, Eliza stood frozen, the business card heavy, in her hand. Working directly for the most arrogant man she'd ever met? Impossible. And yet, as she watched him seamlessly resume his role as charming host, she caught a glimpse of something else. A moment when his guard slipped and a flash of loneliness crossed his face. It was gone in an instant, but it left Eliza with the unsettling feeling that there might be more to Harrison Kingsley III than met the eye. Whether she wanted to discover what that was, well, that was a question for tomorrow. You took the job? Penny stared at Eliza across their tiny kitchen table, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. After he fired you, blackmailed you, and insulted you? Eliza groaned, her head in her hands. When you put it that way, it sounds insane. Because it is insane. It's triple my salary, Penny. Triple. We could move to a better apartment. You could quit your second job. I could finally pay off my student loans. Penny set down her mug. Money isn't everything, Liz, says the person who hasn't been blacklisted from her entire industry, Eliza countered, checking her watch. And now I'm going to be late on my first day, which I'm sure is a fireable offense in the Kingdom of Kingsley. 40 minutes later, Eliza stood in the imposing lobby of Kingsley Tower, clutching a paper cup of coffee, for herself this time, and trying not to look as overwhelmed as she felt. The security guard eyed her suspiciously until she produced the temporary ID Harrison's HR department had emailed overnight. 65th floor, he said, pointing to a specific elevator bank. Executive Express. The elevator shot upward with stomach-lurching speed, opening directly into a minimalist reception area where a poised woman in her 50s waited behind a sleek desk. Ms. Ward, the woman said, standing. I'm Diana, Mr. Kingsley's executive coordinator. I manage his business affairs while his personal assistant, that would be you, manages his schedule, travel, and day-to-day needs. She glanced at the clock. You're 3 minutes late. The subway. Mr. Kingsley's assistants don't take the subway, Diana interrupted. A car service account has been set up in your name. The app was in your welcome package. Welcome package? Diana's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. Delivered to your apartment at 6 a.m. Did you not receive it? Eliza thought of the persistent knocking she'd ignored while getting ready. I may have missed that. Diana's disapproval was palpable. Well, there's no time to review it now. Mr. Kingsley is waiting. She led Eliza through glass doors into a vast corner office with views that made the city look like a scale model. Harrison stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, immaculate in another perfectly tailored suit. He acknowledged their entrance with a curt nod. I don't care what their shareholders think, James, he was saying. If Palmer Tech wanted my opinion, they shouldn't have tried to patent technology my company invented. He paused. No, I won't. Play nice. I'll see them in court. He ended the call and turned to face Eliza fully. You're late. By 3 minutes, Eliza replied, then caught herself. Which won't happen again. Something like amusement flickered in Harrison's eyes. Diana will brief you on your responsibilities. I have a board meeting in 30 minutes that you'll attend to take notes. He studied her simple blouse and trousers. "We'll need to address your wardrobe. Diana, call Margot at Saks." "Wait," Eliza interjected. "What's wrong with my clothes?" Harrison gave her a look that suggested the answer should be obvious. "You represent Kingsley Industries now. Image matters. So you want to Pretty Woman me?" Eliza crossed her arms. "I'm an assistant, not a mannequin." Diana inhaled sharply, clearly unaccustomed to anyone challenging Harrison. Harrison, however, seemed more intrigued than offended. An interesting reference. If I recall, that worked out rather well for Julia Roberts. "That was a movie," Eliza pointed out, "and she was a different kind of professional." A startled laugh escaped Harrison before he could suppress it. "Point taken, Ms. Ward. Diana, cancel. Margot, instead, please inform Ms. Ward about the clothing allowance included in her compensation package. She can make her own selections." He checked his watch. 28 minutes until the board meeting. I suggest you use the time wisely." After Harrison departed, Diana gave Eliza a speculative look. "That's the first time I've heard him laugh in months." The next 3 hours were a blur of information. Passwords to various systems, protocols for different situations, security clearances, and an overview of Harrison's impossibly complex schedule. "He sleeps 4 hours a night," Diana explained, scrolling through a calendar packed with color-coded appointments. "So he expects everyone around him to maintain similar stamina." "That's not sustainable," Eliza muttered. "Neither is working for Harrison Kingsley for most people," Diana replied with unexpected candor. "There's a reason we went through 3 assistants in 2 months. The board meeting was a masterclass in corporate intimidation. Harrison dominated the discussion, cutting off objections before they were fully formed, presenting his vision for the company's future with such conviction that no one dared question it. Eliza took notes diligently, but also observed the dynamics with fascination. Nobody challenged him, not even once. Afterward, rushing to keep up with Harrison's long strides as they returned to his office, Eliza couldn't help herself. "Do they ever disagree with you?" Harrison glanced at her. "Who?" "Your board, your executives, anyone." "Of course they do," he said dismissively. "Just not out loud. That seems counterproductive." Harrison stopped walking and turned to face her fully. "Excuse me?" Eliza knew she was overstepping, but pressed on anyway. "If everyone's afraid to challenge your ideas, how do you know when you're missing something important?" A tense silence fell between them in the middle of the executive hallway. Several passing employees gave them curious glances. Finally, Harrison spoke quietly. "My office. Now." Once the door closed behind them, Harrison moved to the window, his back to her. Eliza braced herself for termination. "My father," Harrison said unexpectedly, "built this company by surrounding himself with yes-men. When he died, I discovered we were on the verge of bankruptcy because nobody had the courage to tell him his expansion strategy was flawed." He turned to face her. "I saved this company by making difficult decisions nobody else would make. I fired 60% of the board and restructured our entire business model in 6 months." "That's impressive," Eliza acknowledged. "But that was then. Now you're the one nobody questions." Harrison studied her with an unreadable expression. "Perhaps that's why I hired you." Before Eliza could respond, his phone rang. He answered it, immediately shifting back into CEO mode, leaving her to wonder if she'd imagined the moment of vulnerability. The day continued at breakneck pace. By evening, Eliza's feet ached. Her mind was saturated with information, and she had a newfound respect for Diana, who operated in this environment with serene efficiency. At 7:30 p.m., when most normal workdays had ended hours ago, Harrison emerged from a meeting to find Eliza still at her desk. "You're still here," he observed. "Did you think I'd quit already?" she challenged, though the effect was somewhat undermined by her obvious exhaustion. Most due by lunchtime on the first day. He paused, seemingly debating something internally. Have you eaten? The question caught her off guard. No, There's a dinner meeting with investors from Singapore. They're bringing their wives. It would be helpful to have a more balanced representation from our side. Eliza stared at him. Are you asking me to pretend to be your date for a business dinner? Not my date. Harrison corrected quickly. A company representative. I'm wearing day-old makeup and haven't seen a hairbrush in hours. Harrison checked his watch. The reservation is at 9. That's more than enough time. For what? His answer was to press a button on his desk. Diana, please call Adeline at Bergdorf. Tell her we need an evening selection for Ms. Ward, delivered to the Westlake Suite at the Peninsula within the hour, and have Gregory bring the car around. Before Eliza could protest, she found herself whisked into a town car and delivered to a hotel suite where a small army of stylists awaited. An hour later, she hardly recognized her reflection. Her curls tamed into an elegant updo, her simple workwear replaced by a midnight blue cocktail dress that fit as if it had been made for her. This is ridiculous, she told her reflection, even as she admired how the dress complemented her eyes. When she emerged from the bedroom, she found Harrison waiting in the suite's living room, having changed into a fresh tuxedo. For a moment, he seemed caught off guard by her transformation, something shifting in his gaze before he masked it with his usual composure. Acceptable, was all he said. But Eliza didn't miss how his eyes lingered a second too long. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a skyscraper with panoramic views of the city. As they rode the elevator, Eliza felt a flutter of nervousness. These investors, she asked, are they important? $40 million important, Harrison replied. And what exactly am I supposed to do? Harrison's mouth curved slightly. Be yourself. That seems to be your specialty. The dinner was unlike any business meeting Eliza had experienced. Conversation flowed between business and pleasure. With Harrison smoothly navigating cultural nuances she would have missed entirely. To her surprise, he occasionally deferred to her, introducing her as one of our most insightful new executives, and actually listening to her contributions. During dessert, Mrs. Chen, the wife of the lead investor, leaned toward Eliza with a conspiratorial smile. How long have you and Mr. Kingsley been together? Eliza nearly choked on her champagne. Oh, we're not. I just work for him. Mrs. Chen looked skeptical. The way he looks at you when you speak. I assumed. Eliza felt heat rising to her cheeks. We have a strictly professional relationship. For now, Mrs. Chen said with a knowing smile. But I recognize that look. My husband had the same one 30 years ago. She patted Eliza's hand. Sometimes the heart sees what is invisible to the eye. Later, as the town car carried them back through the glittering city, an unexpectedly comfortable silence settled between them. They're going to invest, Harrison said finally. Double what we asked for. Congratulations, Eliza replied sincerely. Harrison turned to look at her, his expression unusually open in the dim light. Mr. Chen said they appreciated our company's humanity. A pause. They appreciated you. Eliza smiled despite herself. So I passed my first day? With surprising colors, Harrison admitted. Then, almost reluctantly, he added, Thank you. The two simple words, seemingly foreign on his lips, hung in the air between them, shifting something fundamental in their dynamic. As the car continued through the night-lit streets, Eliza found herself wondering if Mrs. Chen had seen something she herself hadn't yet recognized, or perhaps wasn't ready to acknowledge. 3 weeks into working for Harrison Kingsley, Eliza had developed a routine. She arrived at 7 a.m., 15 minutes before Harrison, to prepare his preferred morning tea, a rare Japanese sencha that cost more than her weekly grocery budget, and review the day's agenda. By the time his private elevator arrived, she had already fielded 24 emails and prioritized the crises of the day. The Palmer Tech legal team sent another settlement offer, she informed him, as he strode into the office one morning. Harrison barely broke stride. Reject it. They know what I want. And the charity board needs your decision on the literacy gala venue. Whatever you think is best. Eliza paused, surprised. You're giving me decision authority on $1 million event? Harrison glanced up from his tablet. You have good instincts. Better than the event planners we pay obscene amounts to impress people I don't care about. Coming from Harrison, this qualified as effusive praise. Eliza tried not to look too pleased. Also, she continued, your mother called again. Harrison's expression darkened. Tell her I'm in meetings all day. I've told her that the last 3 times. She says, and I quote, my son may control half of Manhattan, but I changed his diapers. A reluctant smile tugged at Harrison's lips. Vivid, but still no. She invited you to dinner on Sunday, with a guest of your choosing. Meaning whichever socialite she's decided is suitable marriage material this month. Harrison shook his head. Decline. Eliza bit her lip, then ventured. Cautiously, she sounded lonely. Harrison's gaze snapped to hers, a flicker of surprise crossing his features before his expression closed off again. My mother has 3 homes, 24 staff, and a social calendar that would exhaust a politician. She's not lonely. She's manipulative. If you say so, Eliza replied, though her tone suggested skepticism. I do say so, Harrison stated with finality, then paused. What does your mother do? The unexpected personal question caught Eliza off guard. My mom? She's a high school English teacher in Ohio. Why? Just establishing that you have no basis for comparison regarding maternal manipulation techniques. But there was no edge to his words, and something almost like curiosity in his eyes. Before Eliza could respond, Diana appeared at the door. Mr. Kingsley, the board members are assembled for the quarterly review. We'll continue this discussion later, Harrison told Eliza, straightening his tie as he headed for the door. Your mother said she'll call back at 4, Eliza called after him. Harrison's only response was a dismissive wave as the elevator doors closed behind him. Left alone in the vast office, Eliza found herself wandering to the floor-to-ceiling windows. From 65 stories up, the city looked peaceful, orderly, nothing like the chaotic hustle she experienced at street level. She wondered if that's how Harrison saw the world, from a remove that made the messy details of human existence seem small and manageable. Her phone buzzed with a text from Penny. Alive, or has the billionaire tyrant worked you to death? Eliza smiled and replied, surprisingly still breathing. Even got a compliment today. Sort of. Penny's response was immediate. Stockholm Syndrome setting in. Will stage rescue mission. Haha. Actually heading out to apartment hunt after work. Thought I'd check out that building in Chelsea we always loved. 3 dots appeared as Penny typed. Then, the one with the rooftop garden? Way out of our budget. Speak for yourself, peasant. Triple salary, remember? Don't forget your humble origins when you're living in luxury. Eliza's smile faded slightly as she looked back at the city below. She'd been joking, but there was truth in it. Her world had shifted dramatically in less than a month. The salary Harrison paid her had already changed her life, allowing her to eye apartments she could never have afforded before, to finally pay down her student loans, to stop counting every penny at the grocery store. And yet, watching Harrison operate in his rarefied world, she couldn't help but notice that his wealth seemed to isolate him as much as it empowered him. Despite his obvious intelligence and success, there was something almost lonely about how few genuine connections he'd seemed to have. Her musings were interrupted by Diana's return. Ms. Ward, there's someone here to see Mr. Kingsley. He doesn't have an appointment, but he's rather insistent. Eliza followed Diana to the reception area, where a lanky man in his mid-30s with rumpled clothes and the frenetic energy of someone who'd consumed too much caffeine, was pacing near the elevators. "Sir," Eliza began professionally, "Mr. Kingsley is in meetings all day. If you'd like to schedule—" "Oliver," the man interrupted, extending his hand with an eager smile. "Oliver Kingsley, Harrison's brother. And you must be the new assistant everyone's talking about." Eliza blinked in surprise. In 3 weeks, Harrison had never once mentioned having a brother. "I'm sorry. Mr. Kingsley didn't tell me to expect." "Because he never does," Oliver finished for her, his smile turning wry. "Harrison prefers to pretend I don't exist until he needs a family photo for the annual report." He glanced around the pristine reception area. "Nice throne room, very intimidating. Mind if I wait?" Before Eliza could answer, the elevator doors opened and Harrison emerged, surrounded by board members. He froze momentarily when he spotted Oliver, then smoothly continued his conversation, shaking hands and saying goodbyes as the group dispersed toward the other elevators. Only when the last board member had departed did Harrison approach, his expression carefully neutral. "Oliver, what a surprise." "Is it though?" Oliver replied cheerfully. "Since you've been dodging Mom's calls for weeks and the gala is Saturday?" Harrison's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I'm not attending." "Yeah, that's what I told her, but she insisted I try in person." Oliver shrugged. "Duty fulfilled. Want to grab lunch? I'm starving." Harrison checked his watch. "I have a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes. "Reschedule it," Oliver suggested, seemingly oblivious to the impossibility of this request. "This is family, Har. Remember family? Those people who actually care if you live or die, unlike the shareholders." Eliza watched the exchange with fascination. Oliver was Harrison's physical opposite. Casual where Harrison was formal, expressive where Harrison was controlled, open where Harrison was guarded. Yet there was something in the set of their jaws, the shape of their eyes, that marked them unmistakably as brothers. "Ms. Ward," Harrison said suddenly, "please join us for lunch." Both Eliza and Oliver looked surprised by this. "I have that report to finish," Eliza began. "It can wait," Harrison insisted, with a look that brooked no argument. Diana pushed the Tokyo call to 3. 20 minutes later, Eliza found herself seated in a private dining room at an exclusive restaurant, watching the strange dynamic between the Kingsley brothers unfold. Oliver, she quickly gathered, was the family rebel, having rejected the corporate path to pursue documentary filmmaking. "You should see his latest project," Harrison told Eliza, with what sounded surprisingly like pride. "It won at Sundance." Oliver looked genuinely startled by the praise. "You saw it?" "Of course I saw it," Harrison replied, as if this should be obvious. "I funded half the post-production." "Through a shell company," Oliver pointed out, "so nobody would know a Kingsley was involved." "To ensure it was judged on its merits," Harrison corrected, which it was. Eliza watched this exchange with growing fascination. The brothers clearly cared for each other, yet there was a palpable tension between them, years of unspoken grievances and misunderstandings hardened into habit. "So, Eliza," Oliver turned his attention to her, "how did you end up working for my impossible brother? Harvard business? Family connections? Deal? With the devil?" "Coffee accident, actually," she replied with a smile. "I spilled an entire tray on his $14,000 suit." Oliver burst out laughing. "And you're still alive? Harrison must be slipping." "Ms. Ward has unique qualifications," Harrison said stiffly. "I'll bet she does," Oliver replied with a suggestive waggle of his eyebrows that made Eliza blush despite herself. "Not like that," Harrison snapped, then seemed to regret his sharpness. More evenly, he added, "She's the only assistant who's ever told me I was wrong to my face, repeatedly." "My hero," Oliver said to Eliza, raising his water glass in a mock toast. "The dragon tamer of Kingsley Tower." "You're being ridiculous," Harrison muttered, but Eliza caught the hint of a smile he tried to suppress. The lunch continued with surprising pleasantness, with Oliver sharing embarrassing childhood stories that humanized Harrison in ways Eliza wouldn't have thought possible. She learned that behind the intimidating CEO persona was a boy who had once built a working catapult to launch water balloons at his nanny, who had memorized pi to 100 places to win a bet, who had secretly taught himself Portuguese just to impress a girl in high school. As they were finishing dessert, Oliver's expression grew more serious. "You really should come to the gala, Har. Mom's making it a bigger deal than usual this year. 15th anniversary of Dad's foundation and all that." Harrison's face hardened slightly at the mention of their father. "I'll send a check." "It's not about the money," Oliver insisted. "It's about family. About honoring what Dad built." "What Dad built nearly collapsed because he cared more about appearances than substance," Harrison replied, his tone clipped. "The foundation was hemorrhaging money on vanity projects until I stepped in. And now it's thriving, thanks to you," Oliver acknowledged. "Which is exactly why you should be there to take some credit for once." Harrison remained unmoved. "I have commitments." "What commitments?" Oliver challenged. "Another night alone in your penthouse, reviewing reports? Come on, Harrison. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" A tense silence fell over the table. Eliza felt uncomfortably aware that she was witnessing a deeply personal family dispute. "I should head back to the office," she said quietly, beginning to stand. "No," Harrison said suddenly, placing his hand briefly on hers to stop her. The unexpected contact sent a jolt through Eliza that she desperately hoped neither brother noticed. "I need your help with the Singapore contracts this afternoon." Oliver watched this interaction with keen interest, his gaze moving thoughtfully between them. "Well," he said finally, "if you won't come for family, maybe you'll come for another reason." He turned to Eliza. "What about you? Want to see how the 1% throws a party?" "Oliver," Harrison warned. "What?" "Your assistant should see the foundation side of the business, professional development and all that." Oliver's innocent expression fooled no one. "Plus, Mom would love to meet the woman who's finally got you playing well with others." Harrison's expression was thunderous. But before he could respond, Eliza surprised herself by saying, "Actually, I'd love to attend. Professional development, like you said." Oliver's face lit up with triumph, while Harrison looked at her with an expression of betrayal. "Excellent," Oliver declared, standing and tossing his napkin on the table. "It's settled then. Saturday at 8, Metropolitan Museum. Black tie, of course." He winked at Eliza. "I'll make sure you're on the list." Dragon Tamer. With that parting shot, he bounded from the restaurant, leaving a charged silence in his wake. "You don't have to go," Harrison said finally, not meeting her eyes. "I know," Eliza replied, "but I think you should, and I think you know it too." Harrison studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "If I agree to attend this ridiculous event, will you stop siding with my family against me?" "I'm not taking sides," Eliza said gently. "But from an outsider's perspective, it seems like they miss you, despite everything." Something vulnerable flickered in Harrison's eyes, so briefly Eliza might have imagined it. Then he signaled for the check, his business demeanor firmly back in place. "The Singapore contracts won't review themselves," he said briskly, rising from the table. But as they walked back to the office, Eliza noticed that Harrison seemed distracted, his usual laser focus absent. And just before they reached the building, he said quietly, almost to himself, "I'll need a new tuxedo for Saturday." Eliza smiled, but said nothing, sensing that this small victory was more significant than it appeared, and wondering why the prospect of attending a charity gala with Harrison Kingsley made her heart beat just a little faster than it should. "You're going to a Kingsley Foundation gala? The Kingsley Foundation gala?" Penny paced their small living room, gesturing wildly with a half-eaten slice of pizza. "The same event you crashed as a fake server a month ago?" Eliza sat cross-legged on their couch, sorting through online dress options on her laptop. "Technically, I was invited this time. By his brother, to make Harrison uncomfortable," Penny pointed out. "That's not exactly a date." "It's not a date at all," Eliza said firmly. "It's work, professional development." Penny stopped pacing to give her a skeptical look. "Professional development doesn't make you try on 7 different hairstyles this morning." "I want to look appropriate," Eliza defended. "These people are photographed for fashion magazines just going to get coffee. I can't show up looking like me." "What's wrong with you?" Penny demanded, plopping down beside her. "You're gorgeous, smart, and the only person who can apparently handle working for Manhattan's most eligible robot." Eliza rolled her eyes. "He's not a robot. He's just complicated." "Complicated?" Penny repeated slowly, a knowing smile spreading across her face. "Oh my God, you like him." "I do not." "You do. You like your impossible billionaire boss." Penny clapped her hands together in delight. "This is better than a movie." "It's nothing like a movie," Eliza insisted, though her cheeks had grown warm. "He's demanding and arrogant and completely out of touch with normal human existence." "But?" Penny prompted. Eliza sighed, closing her laptop. "But sometimes I see these glimpses of someone else. Someone who cares deeply about things but doesn't know how to show it. Someone who's been hurt and is trying so hard not to let it happen again." She shook her head. "I'm being ridiculous." "You're being human," Penny corrected gently. "And so is he, underneath all that money and power." She nudged Eliza's shoulder. "So what are you going to wear to seduce the billionaire?" "Penny? What?" "Every romantic comedy needs a makeover for the big event scene. It's practically law." Despite her protests, Eliza found herself standing in front of a mirror at Bergdorf Goodman the next day, courtesy of the clothing allowance Harrison had insisted she use. The stylist hovered as Eliza examined her reflection in an emerald green gown that made her eyes look almost luminous. "It's perfect," the stylist declared. "Mr. Kingsley will approve." "I'm not dressing for Mr. Kingsley's approval," Eliza said automatically, though she wondered if that was entirely true. The way Harrison had looked at her after her transformation for the Singapore dinner had stayed with her, a memory she returned to more often than she cared to admit. Saturday evening arrived with unexpected nervousness. Harrison had arranged for a car to pick her up, and Eliza found herself checking the clock every few minutes as she finished her makeup. "Stop fidgeting," Penny instructed, making final adjustments. To Eliza's hair. "You look amazing." The doorbell rang, and Penny peeked through the peephole. "Car's here, and oh my God." "What?" Eliza asked, suddenly anxious. "Your boss is here. Like, actually here. At our door." "What?" Eliza pushed past Penny to look for herself. Sure enough, Harrison Kingsley stood in their hallway, impeccable in a tuxedo, examining the chipped paint on their apartment door with barely concealed horror. Eliza yanked the door open, catching Harrison with his hand raised to knock. "What are you doing here?" Harrison seemed momentarily at a loss for words as he took in her appearance. He cleared his throat. "I was in the neighborhood." "You were in Brooklyn, voluntarily." The car service texted that they were delayed. Traffic accident on the bridge. His eyes traveled over her emerald dress, her carefully styled hair, her flushed face. "You look appropriate." From behind Eliza, Penny snorted. "Smooth." Harrison's attention shifted to Penny, his composure returning. "You must be the roommate. Penny, right? The caterer?" "Chef," Penny corrected, extending her hand. "But yes, I'm the roommate, the one who's heard all about how demanding and impossible you are." "Penny," Eliza hissed. To her surprise, Harrison's mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. "I'm sure Ms. Ward's assessment has been entirely fair." His gaze moved past them, taking in the small, slightly shabby apartment with its mismatched furniture and cramped kitchen. Something unreadable passed across his face. "Would you like to come in?" Eliza offered belatedly. "I just need to grab my wrap and purse." Harrison stepped inside cautiously, as if entering a foreign country. "This is cozy. That's rich person. Code for tiny," Penny stage whispered to Eliza, who shot her a warning look before disappearing into her bedroom. Left alone with Harrison, Penny crossed her arms. "So, you're the guy who fired my best friend and then tripled her salary. I prefer to think of it as recognizing untapped potential," Harrison replied. "And now you're taking her to fancy galas." "It's a work event," Harrison said stiffly. "Right." Penny studied him for a moment. "You know, she's different since she started working for you." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "More confident. More challenged." Penny narrowed her eyes. "But also more worried about measuring up to some impossible standard. She tried on 7 hairstyles this morning." Harrison looked genuinely surprised by this information. "She never seems concerned about my opinion at the office." "That's because she's brave," Penny said simply. "Doesn't mean she's not scared." Before Harrison could respond, Eliza returned, clutching a small purse and a shawl. "Ready? Your apartment is a 15-minute drive from Manhattan in good traffic," Harrison said abruptly. "Why are you taking the subway every day?" Eliza blinked at the unexpected question. "Because subway fare is $4 round trip, and the bridge toll alone is—" "Use the car service," Harrison interrupted. "Every day. It's already in your benefits package. That seems wasteful when public transportation is—" "It's not a request, Ms. Ward. Your time is valuable to the company." His tone left no room for argument. The ride to Manhattan passed in relative silence, Eliza acutely aware of Harrison beside her in the back of the luxury sedan. He seemed lost in thought, occasionally checking his phone but mostly staring out the window at the city lights. "Thank you," Eliza said finally, "for picking me up personally. You didn't have to do that." Harrison glanced at her. "Oliver suggested it would be gentlemanly." Eliza laughed despite herself. "And you always do what Oliver suggests?" "Rarely," Harrison admitted, a reluctant smile forming. "But occasionally he has useful insights." As they pulled up to the Metropolitan Museum, Harrison tensed visibly. Camera flashes illuminated the red carpet where New York's elite posed and preened. "We can use the side entrance," he offered, noting Eliza's wide-eyed expression. She squared her shoulders. "And miss my red carpet moment? Not a chance." His smile this time was genuine. "Ms. Ward, you continue to surprise me." As they made their entrance, Eliza was grateful for Harrison's steadying presence beside her. Photographers called his name, and he navigated the gauntlet with practiced ease, his hand lightly resting on the small of her back in a way that felt both protective and possessive. "Harrison, darling." A striking woman in her 60s approached, her silver hair elegantly styled, her bearing regal. "You actually came." "Mother," Harrison acknowledged, accepting her air kiss with clear discomfort. "You remember my assistant, Eliza Ward." "Of course," Mrs. Kingsley said, though her calculating gaze suggested this was their first meeting. "The one Oliver can't stop talking about." She turned her full attention to Eliza. "So you're the miracle worker who's gotten my son to attend family functions again." "I wouldn't say," Eliza began, but Mrs. Kingsley had already taken her arm, guiding her away from Harrison. "Come, dear. Let me introduce you to everyone while Harrison fulfills his donor obligations." For the next hour, Eliza found herself paraded before New York society like an exotic curiosity. "This is the girl who stands up to Harrison," Mrs. Kingsley would say, as if introducing a rare species. The responses varied from disbelief to fascination. "How do you do it?" whispered one elegantly dressed woman who introduced herself as a childhood friend of Harrison's. He reduced our COO to tears during a merger negotiation. I just treat him like a person, Eliza replied, uncomfortable with the attention. That's exactly it, came Oliver's voice as he appeared beside her, looking surprisingly dapper in his tuxedo. You're the only one who doesn't treat him like he's Harrison Kingsley, terrifying titan of industry. Eliza accepted the champagne. He offered. Where is he anyway? Hiding in the Egyptian wing, probably. He hates these things. Oliver nodded toward a doorway. Through there, past the sarcophagi. He thinks no one knows about his hiding spot. Eliza found Harrison exactly where Oliver had predicted, standing alone before an ancient stone carving, hands clasped behind his back. Your mother is very thorough with introductions, Eliza said, coming to stand beside him. I've met everyone from your third-grade teacher to your ex-girlfriend. Harrison winced. Lindsay was here? I thought she was in Monaco. Not her, Caroline something. She said you dated at Columbia. Ah, Harrison looked uncomfortable. Ancient history. Like these? Eliza gestured to the carvings. Oliver said this was your hiding place. Oliver talks too much, Harrison muttered, but without real annoyance. After a pause, he asked, Are you enjoying yourself? It's different from the publishing world's idea of a fancy party, Eliza admitted. Less wine in plastic cups, more dynasties plotting marriages. Harrison actually laughed at that. You've met my mother. She's formidable. That's diplomatic. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, gazing at the ancient artwork. Why this spot? Eliza asked finally. Of all the hiding places in the museum. Harrison was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, softly, my father used to bring me here when I was a boy. Before board meetings and quarterly, reports and everything else became more important. He touched the stone carving gently. He told me these would still be here long after all our companies and fortunes were dust. It was the only time he ever suggested that anything mattered, more than business. The vulnerability in his voice made something twist in Eliza's chest. Without thinking, she reached out and took his hand. Harrison stared at their joined hands with an expression of genuine confusion, as if he'd forgotten what simple human contact felt like. Har? Mom's looking for you. Oliver's voice broke the moment. Harrison quickly withdrew his hand as his brother appeared in the doorway. It's almost time for the speeches. Oliver's knowing gaze moved between them, but mercifully, he said, nothing about the tableau he'd interrupted. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of speeches, applause, and champagne. Harrison delivered brief but impactful remarks about the Foundation's mission, and Eliza was struck by the passion beneath. His usually controlled demeanor when he spoke about education initiatives for underprivileged children. Later, as the orchestra played and couples moved onto the dance floor, Harrison appeared at Eliza's side. Would you care to dance, Ms. Ward? Eliza's heart skipped traitorously. I thought this was a work event. It is, he said seriously. Networking is an important skill. In that case, she replied, placing her hand in his, I should practice. Harrison was, unsurprisingly, an excellent dancer, guiding her effortlessly across the floor. Eliza was acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his eyes never left hers. People are watching us, she murmured, noticing the curious glances and whispers. Let them, Harrison replied, drawing her slightly closer. They always watch me. I've learned to ignore it. Is that why you seem so alone, even in crowded rooms? Like this? The question slipped out before she could reconsider its boldness. Harrison's steps faltered almost imperceptibly before he recovered. You're very observant, Ms. Ward. Eliza, she corrected softly. After hours, in a museum, dancing, I think you can call me Eliza. Something shifted in Harrison's gaze, warming it. Eliza, he repeated, as if testing the feel of her name. And yes, to answer your question. I learned early that being a Kingsley meant always being watched, always being judged. It became easier to keep everyone at a distance. Everyone? Until recently, he amended, his voice dropping to nearly a whisper. Their dance had slowed, their bodies drawing closer as if by magnetic pull rather than conscious decision. The music swelled, and Eliza felt herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by something powerful and unexpected. Harrison's expression softened, his usual mask of control slipping to reveal something raw and real beneath. For a breathless moment, Eliza thought he might kiss her. "Harrison, darling." His mother's voice shattered the moment like crystal striking marble. "The Vandermeers are leaving, and absolutely insisted on saying goodbye." Harrison's expression closed off instantly, the walls slamming back into place. He stepped back from Eliza with practiced politeness. "Thank you for the dance, Ms. Ward." The sudden formality stung more than it should have. Eliza watched him walk away, feeling strangely bereft, as if something precious had been within her grasp and then vanished. "He's terrified, you know." Eliza turned to find Oliver beside her, 2 champagne flutes in hand. He offered her one. "Terrified of what?" she asked, accepting the drink gratefully. "Of you, of how you make him feel." Oliver watched his brother across the room, charming elderly donors with practiced ease. "I haven't seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you since, well, ever." Eliza's cheeks warmed. "You're imagining things?" "I'm a documentary filmmaker. I observe human behavior for a living." Oliver sipped his champagne. "And my emotionally constipated brother is falling for his assistant, but has no idea what to do about it. It would be hilarious if it weren't so sad." "Even if that were true," Eliza said carefully, "it would be completely inappropriate. He's my boss." "And you're the first person who's made him smile in years," Oliver countered. "The first person who challenges him, who sees the man behind the money." He shrugged. "But what do I know? I'm just the family screw-up who happens to have actual human emotions." Before Eliza could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. Lindsay Collier had arrived, fashionably late and dramatically underdressed in a gown that left little to the imagination. She made a beeline for Harrison, greeting him with a kiss that landed dangerously close to his mouth. Something cold and unpleasant twisted in Eliza's stomach. "Ah, the ex makes her move," Oliver observed. "Right on cue." "They dated?" Eliza tried to keep her voice neutral. "Briefly, last year. She dumped him when he wouldn't propose after 3 months. Now that he's been named Businessman of the Year and her modeling contracts are drying up." Oliver made a cynical gesture. Across the room, Lindsay had her hand possessively on Harrison's arm. To Eliza's dismay, he wasn't pulling away. "I think I need some air," she said abruptly, handing her empty glass back to Oliver. She fled to a small balcony overlooking the museum gardens, the cool night air a relief against her flushed skin. What was wrong with her? She had no claim on Harrison Kingsley. No right to feel this sharp jealousy watching another woman touch him. He was her boss, nothing more. So why did her heart feel like it was cracking? "Eliza," she turned to find Harrison in the doorway, silhouetted against the light from inside. "Your friend seems to have missed you," Eliza said, hating the edge in her voice. "Lindsay?" Harrison stepped onto the balcony. "She's not my friend." "That's not what it looked like. Are you jealous?" He sounded genuinely puzzled. "Don't be ridiculous," Eliza snapped, then immediately regretted her tone. More calmly, she added, "I just needed some fresh air." Harrison moved to stand beside her at the balcony rail, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cool night. "I told Lindsay I wasn't interested," he said quietly. In her, or her sudden renewed attention now that the Forbes list is out. You don't owe me an explanation, Eliza insisted, though a treacherous relief washed through her. Perhaps I want to give you one anyway. Harrison turned to face her fully, his expression more open than she'd ever seen. Perhaps I want you to know that the only woman I've been able to think about for weeks is standing right here. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. Harrison. I know it's inappropriate, he continued, the words coming in an uncharacteristic rush. You work for me. There are 1,000 reasons why I shouldn't say this. But tonight, watching you charm everyone from board members to museum donors, seeing you fit so effortlessly into a world that's always felt like a prison to me. He shook his head, as if amazed by his own thoughts. You make me want things I've never let myself want before. What things? Eliza whispered, her heart pounding. Harrison's hand came up to gently touch her cheek. Connection. Honesty. Someone who sees me as Harrison, not as a Kingsley. The vulnerability in his eyes undid her completely. Eliza reached up, covering his hand with her own. I've only ever seen you as Harrison, she admitted softly. Infuriating. Brilliant, complicated Harrison. Time seemed to slow as he leaned toward her, his intention clear in his darkened eyes. Eliza's eyes fluttered closed as the space between them disappeared. His lips had barely brushed hers when a camera flash exploded in their peripheral vision, followed by a triumphant laugh. They sprang apart to find a photographer backing away, his camera aimed directly at them. Perfect, the man crowed. Harrison. Kingsley and Mystery Woman! Page 6 will love this! Harrison's expression transformed instantly from tender to thunderous. Give me that camera, now. The photographer continued retreating. Public event, public figure, freedom of the press, Mr. Kingsley. Before either of them could react further, he had disappeared back into the gala. Harrison turned back to Eliza, his face a mask of controlled fury and something that looked almost like fear. Eliza, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... Don't, she interrupted, her own emotions in turmoil. Don't apologize. Not for that. For a moment, they stood in charged silence, the almost kiss hanging between them like a physical thing. Then Harrison's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. It's already on social media, he said flatly. We need to go. Now. As he guided her quickly through back corridors to avoid the main crowd, Eliza felt a strange sense of unreality. Just minutes ago, she had been in Harrison Kingsley's arms, on the verge of a kiss that would have changed everything. Now they were fleeing like criminals, the moment shattered. In the car, Harrison was already on the phone to his PR team, his voice clipped and professional as he issued directives for handling the situation. Eliza sat beside him, feeling increasingly foolish. Of course this was a crisis for him. A man in his position, caught in a compromising position with his assistant. It was a PR nightmare, nothing more. When they reached her apartment building, Harrison finally ended his call. The silence that fell between them was heavy with things unsaid. I'll have Diana reassign you to another department on Monday, he said finally, not meeting her eyes. With a promotion, of course. This incident can't be allowed to damage your career. Incident, Eliza repeated softly. Is that what we're calling it? Harrison's knuckles whitened where he gripped his phone. What happened tonight was a lapse in judgment on my part. I take full responsibility. The clinical detachment in his voice felt like a physical blow. A lapse in judgment, Eliza echoed. I see. Eliza, thank you for the ride home, Mr. Kingsley. She cut him off, reaching for the door handle. And for the professional development opportunity. I learned a great deal tonight. She was out of the car before he could respond, walking quickly toward her building entrance without looking back, heels clicking sharply on the concrete. Only when she was safely inside her apartment, door locked behind her, did Eliza allow the tears to fall. Penny found her an hour later, still in her evening gown, scrolling through her phone where the photo was already trending. Harrison Kingsley and his mysterious assistant in what appeared to be a romantic embrace. "Oh, Liz," Penny said softly, sitting beside her. "What happened?" Eliza looked up, her eyes red, but her voice steady as she delivered the verdict on her own heart. "I think I just became a complication." Monday morning arrived with cruel efficiency. Eliza stood outside Kingsley Tower, coffee in hand. Not for Harrison this time, but for herself. She had spent Sunday alternating between anger and heartache, ignoring 3 calls from Diana and 1 from Oliver. "You don't have to go back," Penny had insisted. "You can find another job." But Eliza Ward didn't run from difficult situations. So here she was, ready to face whatever reassignment Harrison had planned. The security guard nodded as she approached. "Morning, Ms. Ward. Mr. Kingsley is expecting you." "I'm sure he is," she muttered, stepping into the executive elevator. Diana was waiting when the doors opened, her expression uncharacteristically sympathetic. "He's been here since 5, she said without preamble. "Hasn't slept, from the looks of it." Eliza steeled herself as she entered Harrison's office. She found him at the window, his back to the door, silhouette sharp against the morning light. He turned at the sound of her entrance, and Eliza was shocked by his appearance. Unshaven, eyes shadowed, his usual immaculate presentation replaced by obvious exhaustion. "Ms. Ward," he said formally, though something in his voice betrayed uncertainty. "Thank you for coming in." "Did I have a choice?" Eliza replied evenly, remaining by the door. Harrison gestured to the chair across from his desk. When Eliza was seated, he pushed a folder toward her. "Your transfer paperwork," he explained, returning to his own chair. "Head of editorial for the publishing division. Your own team. Substantial raise, complete autonomy." Eliza opened the folder without touching the papers inside. "Very generous. It's what you deserve," Harrison said quietly. "You've proven yourself more than capable." Eliza closed the folder with deliberate calm. "And this solves your PR problem." Harrison's jaw tightened. "The media speculation has been contained. My team released a statement clarifying that we were discussing business at a company event." "Of course," Eliza said, a hollow feeling spreading in her chest. "Just business." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. "Is that all, Mr. Kingsley?" Eliza finally asked, rising from her chair. "No." The word burst from him with unexpected force. He stood abruptly, coming around the desk to stand before her. "No, that's not all." Something in his expression, raw, unguarded, made Eliza's heart race despite herself. "I rehearsed this," Harrison admitted, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "All night. The perfect, logical explanation for why we should maintain a purely professional relationship. The speech about workplace dynamics and power imbalances. The rational case for why what almost happened at the gala was a mistake." "And?" Eliza prompted, barely breathing. "And I realized I've been hiding behind logic and rationality my entire life," Harrison said, his voice rough with emotion, "using them as shields against anything real, anything that might hurt if I lost it." He took a step closer, close enough that Eliza could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes. "I've built an empire by calculating risks," he continued, "by never acting without knowing the outcome in advance. But there's no spreadsheet for this, Eliza. No algorithm that can predict what happens when you let someone matter to you. When you let someone see you. Really see you." "Harrison," Eliza whispered, her resolve weakening. "You asked me once when was the last time I did something just because it made me happy," he said, reaching hesitantly for her hand. "The truth is, I can't remember. Not until you spilled coffee on me and had the courage to tell me I was wrong. His fingers entwined with hers, the contact sending electricity up her arm. I've spent my life being Harrison Kingsley III, living up to a legacy, proving myself worthy of the name. I forgot how to just be Harrison, until you reminded me. Eliza's eyes stung with unexpected tears. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't want to reassign you, Harrison admitted. That's the logical solution, but it's not what I want. What I want is completely irrational, and probably impossible, and definitely complicated. Tell me anyway, Eliza urged, her heart in her throat. I want to see where this goes, Harrison said simply. You and me. I want to take you to dinner not because it might help close a deal, but because I can't stop thinking about the way you smile. I want to hear your opinions not because they're useful professionally, but because they matter to me personally. Eliza cut him off by rising onto her tiptoes and pressing her lips to his. Harrison froze for a split second, then responded, with a passion that took her breath away, his arms encircling her waist and drawing her closer. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Harrison rested his forehead against hers. I had more speech prepared, he murmured. It was a good speech, Eliza acknowledged with a smile. But I think we're past speeches now. Harrison's answering smile, genuine, unguarded, transformed his face. So where does this leave us? Complicated, Eliza admitted. I can't work directly for you if we're exploring this. So take the promotion, Harrison suggested. You deserve it. Regardless, won't people talk after the photo? Harrison tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. People always talk. I've spent my life worrying about what others think. I'm done with that. Just like that? Eliza asked skeptically. No, Harrison admitted with a rueful laugh. Not just like that. I'll probably struggle with it daily. I've spent 38 years building these walls. They won't come down overnight. Good thing I'm persistent, Eliza replied, squeezing his hand. Harrison's expression sobered. I can't promise I'll be good at this, Eliza. Relationships, vulnerability, they don't come naturally to me. I don't need promises, she said softly. I just need you to try. To let me see the real Harrison, not just the CEO. A knock at the door interrupted them. Harrison stepped back reluctantly as Diana entered, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, Mr. Kingsley, but the Palmer Tech lawyers are on line 1, and the board is assembled in the conference room. Harrison nodded, then turned back to Eliza. Dinner. Tonight? No business, no assistants, no photographers. Just us. I'd like that, Eliza said, warmth spreading through her chest. As if suddenly remembering Diana's presence, Harrison cleared his throat and stepped further away, his CEO persona slipping partially back into place. Ms. Ward will be taking the position of editorial director, effective immediately. Please have HR process the paperwork today. Diana's expression remained professionally neutral, though her eyes darted between them with barely concealed curiosity. Of course, Mr. Kingsley. When Diana had left, Harrison turned back to Eliza. 7 o'clock? I know a place where no one will bother us. 7 it is, Eliza agreed, gathering her purse. At the door she paused. Oh, and Harrison? Wear something casual. No $14,000 suits. His surprised laugh followed her into the hallway, where she found Diana waiting with a knowing smile. So, the older woman said, not reassigned, after all. Promoted, Eliza corrected, though her flushed cheeks likely told a different story. About time, Diana remarked cryptically. He hasn't smiled like that since. She paused. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen him smile like that. 3 months later, Eliza stood on the balcony of Harrison's penthouse, the city lights spread before her like stars. Behind her, she could hear the sounds of the small dinner party winding down. Oliver's distinctive laugh, Penny's voice as she discussed catering opportunities with Mrs. Kingsley, the clink of glasses as Harrison gathered them. "Penny's a hit," Harrison observed, joining her at the railing. "Mother's commissioning her for the summer fundraiser." "Your mother's a hit," Eliza countered. "Who knew she had such a talent for matchmaking?" Harrison groaned. "Please don't encourage her. She's already planning our wedding." "Is she now?" Eliza teased, turning to face him. "Presumptuous. Kingsleys always get what they want," Harrison replied, sliding his arms around her waist. "Eventually." "And what do you want, Harrison Kingsley?" Eliza asked softly. In answer, Harrison reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Eliza's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a stunning emerald ring, the exact shade of the dress she'd worn to the gala. Are you... For once, words failed her. "No," Harrison said quickly. "Not yet. This is a promise ring." "A promise ring?" Eliza repeated, eyebrows raised. "What are we, teenagers?" Harrison laughed, the sound still new enough to delight her. "It's a promise that we're heading there, when we're both ready, when the timing is right." He grew serious. "I know 3 months isn't long enough to decide forever, but I know enough to be certain I want the chance to convince you." Eliza felt tears prick her eyes as Harrison continued, his voice low and sincere. "This is me promising to keep trying, to keep letting you in, to keep becoming the man who deserves you. Not Harrison Kingsley III, billionaire CEO, but just Harrison, the man who falls more in love with you every day." "Harrison," Eliza whispered, touching the ring with trembling fingers. "You don't have to wear it," he added hurriedly. "If it's too much, too soon." Eliza cut him off with a kiss, pulling back only to say, "It's perfect, I love it, and I love you." The smile that spread across Harrison's face was worth every moment of heartache, every complication, every obstacle they'd overcome. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that spilling coffee on Harrison Kingsley had been the best mistake of her life. Inside the penthouse, Oliver raised his glass in a silent toast as he watched them through the window. Beside him, Penny grinned. "Told you," Oliver said. "Romantic comedy material." "I just hope the sequel's as good," Penny replied with a laugh. On the balcony, oblivious to their audience, Eliza and Harrison shared another kiss against the backdrop of the glittering city. The arrogant billionaire and the woman who had taught him how to love, finally writing their own happy ending.